Hey, what's up everybody? It's Joe from Gadgetry Tech, and in today's video I'm going to talk about an affordable gaming headset from Turtle Beach, the Atlas 200. Now the Atlas 200 has a few different price points and configuration options, so I'm just going to quickly cover it. The one I'm reviewing is the PC version, which is the most expensive one at $69.99, and it's available in black only. If you want white, that kind of forces you into the PlayStation variant, which still will work with everything. It's a 3.5mm analog connection, but it will have PlayStation branding on the headband. The PS version also comes in black, again with the same branding on the headband, and if you buy the multi-platform version at $59.99, that too is black, but it has the same standard gray headband that this guy does, which is again the PC version. Now the biggest difference from the $59 version to the $69 version is this little DAC right here. It's a USB-A to 3.5mm TRRS connection. The advantage of this is if you're on PC, this can give you a noticeable improvement in sound quality just because usually the onboard audio built into a motherboard isn't that great. It's also powering a lot of other electrical components on the board, which generally causes some interference issues in addition to the headphone output not necessarily being the greatest. It can vary, of course. Some computers may be better than others, but for a $10 difference in price, if you were just planning on plugging in directly to your PC, to me, this overall has many more benefits than cons, and it's worth the price increase. Conversely, if you're a PlayStation gamer, I do not recommend this version. Even though I normally like the idea of having a dedicated DAC for PS5, which is digital to analog converter, it's what you would plug your headphone jack into. On the PlayStation side, this dongle doesn't get as loud as plugging in directly to your PlayStation 5 controller. So if you are used to the higher volume and you just don't know if you should get one over the other, just save your $10, get the analog version. They sound identical to each other on PlayStation because there's no EQ being saved to the dongle. It's all done via Swarm 2, which I'll show you later in this review. So let's talk about comfort and build quality and the overall chassis design, and I'll make some comparisons to a couple other noteworthy competitors in this price class. For one, just like the much more expensive open back Atlas Air from Turtle Beach, this less expensive version is a closed back, so these cups here are completely sealed off, and it will have a different sound profile because of that. You do also get a different mounting mechanism for the cups themselves, so basically you can see that I can pivot or like tilt them in and out, but I can't rotate it. The headband is fixed. Part of that is solved by having a somewhat 3D shaped pad, which does rotate, so make sure that you have this kind of angled correctly. You can see that there's a little bit of an angle on the cut of this pad right here to kind of kick them in. This is important because you want to have a good seal, and the way your head is shaped, typically down here, you want the pad to just be slightly thicker, so it is nice to see that it's shaped to bump this out just a little bit. The one downside though is because this doesn't rotate, depending on head shape, it might not feel as secure or like, you know, placed on your head as snugly as you may have preferred. This is a very light clamp force, and thanks to this suspension strap here, which is adjustable via Velcro straps, it feels very light on your head. This has a lot of the pros that I liked on the Atlas Air with just a little bit less articulation. So the one downside of this is if you're planning on stowing this away in a bag or for travel, it's always going to take up that much space. Also because this microphone is not removable. It's flip to mute only, and right there will be the mute, or you can do it all the way up to tuck it out of the way. The microphone capsule design is quite cool because they have this little piece of foam that's glued in there, and that actually serves as a windscreen, which is going to help with plosives. It's not like a full sock that you get on some other gaming headsets, but it is nice to not just have an exposed capsule where you have the little circle there. So a little bit of attention to detail. It's kind of nice for this price range. Where I think they kind of cut things short, in my opinion, is I wish the microphone was detachable, although it's really hard to get a good flip to mute mechanism on a detachable mic. So it is what it is, but to me the biggest area that they could have done was having a removable cable, because cables can fail over time, and frankly I just like the idea of being able to switch it out. Now the other advantage of the Atlas 200 design is for glasses comfort. I don't wear glasses for reading or anything. I don't have any prescription glasses, but I have a few different temples and frames from Gunnar because I have different light sensitivities that I kind of want to alternate from. On the thickest temple frame, like the piece that goes on the side of your head, these guys are much more noticeable on here because the ear pads themselves aren't super wide. This is basically a 53mm opening, 24mm of depth in the front, and 30mm of depth on the back. So ear clearance is okay. However, because of this design, I feel more pressure going back here just because the opening isn't as large. Conversely, even though the SteelSeries Nova 1 has a little bit more clamp force, which generally isn't as good for glasses, the fact that it's taller helps relieve some of the pressure of the glasses frame right here above my ear. So on a thicker frame, I actually enjoy the comfort of the Nova 1 a little bit more. That height is really helpful for me. On the thicker frames, because these pads are so soft and breathable and very compliant, I can still game with the thinner stuff no problem, and both of these are class leading. The HyperX isn't that it's uncomfortable, it's not bad, the clearance helps, but being a more shallow leatherette pad has just more pressure on the frame, and this is much more sensitive to a lack of seal. So if you are bass sensitive and you want to preserve as much bass as you can, this will be most impacted by glasses comfort, or like glasses being put on your head, where these two, they don't really change their sound signature so much when you're wearing glasses. The Atlas 200's controls are super straightforward. I already mentioned the flip to mute mic, and again, that's the mute position. And then there's basically an analog volume wheel. So you have a minimum stop and max volume, and it's in a place that makes a lot of sense. It's very easy to find. I personally like the speed and convenience of flip to mute. The only problem is you can see that when I pull this down, it to me is about 10 degrees too high, 5 degrees too high, whatever. So I have to feel like I have to bend the boom mic down a little bit to get it below my face. Otherwise, the position it comes off by default, to me, it's just a little bit high and it's more of a distraction. Both of these put the microphone capsule in a more normal, out of sight, out of mind type placement. Not the end of the world because you can bend the boom, and this is long enough. I think they got the flexibility really nice. It's quite compliant, but you will have to kind of tweak that once in a while.
All right, so one advantage of this particular microphone capsule is the fact that it's wired. I don't have to deal with wireless compression or range issues, and when you have more bandwidth because of a wire, that means your microphone can basically sound as good as this capsule can possibly sound. I'm not losing anything that this is capable of doing. And as you can hear, the microphone sound quality is actually really good. It's on the upper end for this price range because even though other headphones and headsets benefit from having a wire too, they don't always have the best microphone capsule in this price range because it's considered a budget class. Turtle Beach here, I think, went on the better side of things as far as the microphone capsule goes. So overall, very clear. And we're going to jump over to the PC with the Swarm 2 software. Then I'll talk to you on the dongle so you can hear the difference. All right, so just to quickly show you the Swarm 2 software, if you bought the PC version, you do have the benefit of using Swarm 2 to customize some of the settings because now you have a dongle. And just to be clear, I am using the dongle for the microphone portion of this. So you're hearing the headset mic routed through that. I'm not doing any changes in Windows. So naturally you get volume control. This is just Windows digital volume. I can even adjust that using the volume knob on my keyboard. Pretty self-explanatory, as is superhuman hearing. It's a common feature with Turtle Beach where you have, once enabled, 3 different modes to alter the frequency response of the headset and add like a compressor. It can help for first-person shooters in particular, but to me it does kind of sap some of the dynamics and overall sound quality that you're paying for. So usually I either leave it off or at a very low setting, such as 30. Game to chat mix is cool to have on the software side because there's a virtual driver in place. However, this is nothing you can control on the headset because it's analog, so you can only adjust it via the mouse controls here. Now this installs a virtual audio driver for game chat as well. So if you are sending your audio from either Discord or your game to the virtual chat device, you can also add chat boost, and this is going to add some different frequency changes to what your friends' voices sound like, and you can even make them a little bit louder in case they're too soft-spoken, in addition to the game to chat mix function as well. I usually don't use Waves 3D. It's their own 3D audio engine, and it can sound fun and immersive for some stuff, but not across the board. I typically prefer Dolby Atmos for that stuff. So while it is a feature you can enable with 3 different modes and toggle it on and off, play with that and see if you like it or not. High bandwidth audio. By default, mine did 24-bit 48,000 hertz or 48 kilohertz. That's the one I recommend. It does go up to 96 kilohertz. However, you're not going to really hear a difference in that. And all game engines, for the most part, are 48 hertz or 48 kilohertz and below anyway. However, if you click this, it gives you the Windows audio settings to quickly change it. The microphone is capped at 48 kilohertz. As far as microphone monitoring goes, that's side tone, and it gets pretty loud if your headset is turned up loud. If it's quiet, naturally, you're going to boost this up quite a bit. It is in real time. This is significantly better than the Windows side tone feature built into Windows. So if that's an important feature for you on PC, this alone is worth getting the dongle for Swarm 2 because the mic monitoring is done much better than any other option you would have going through other software. So if I scroll down and look at the audio presets, you can do custom EQ settings. Now this doesn't save to the dongle, so you're not going to get a difference on the PlayStation side. This is just for Windows. And there are 4 different presets, and I've measured all of these, so the sound quality side will cover that later. But you get signature sound, which is basically flat. It's the same as being analog. You have bass boost, bass and treble boost, or treble and bass boost, vocal boost, and then your own ability to do custom EQ. And having said that, this is my custom EQ. So if you are getting this headset and you want to do what I did to make some audio changes, I'll have the numbers pop up on the screen now. So feel free to pause it here. All you do is grab the slider and adjust it to closely match the numbers as best as possible. You can also do custom EQ for the microphone. So this has all been recorded using signature sound. This is what my voice sounds like on the full preset. This is what my voice sounds like on the clarity preset. And this is what my voice sounds like on the smooth preset. Back to signature sound, this is what my voice sounds like. And you can see the responses and change in EQ profile is pretty much instantaneous. So they've made huge improvements on the software side. I never had any issues with it. So I think Swarm 2 is finally maturing to the level I think Turtle Beach wanted it to be.
Getting into sound quality and starting with the objective side first, which is measurement based. If you care about measurement rigs, I use a Gross KB006X Pinaclone. I am working on getting more HRTF simulators, which is basically simulating different types of ears, which can hear differently. But in a short story, if you're not familiar with measurements, just compare my measurements against other measurements I have done, because it's the same ear simulator. And I have a link in the description below where I have literally hundreds of headsets and headphones that I've spent a lot of time measuring, this one included, because I've done over 100 measurements of this, checking various placements, different EQ profiles, analog versus the dongle, etc. Now Turtle Beach is going for their signature sound here, and the Atlas 200 is really not much different in that regard. You know, it's definitely mid-bass forward, but it's not carrying into the upper mid-bass and low mid-range where it sounds like thick and bloated as much as some other headsets do. Specifically, it's more noticeable with SteelSeries and Razer's sound signature, in my opinion, where they can sound a little bit thicker and borderline muddy, but again, this is the budget price range. Mid-range tuning is typically good with Turtle Beach, and it's no different here. A little bit of a channel imbalance, but it's within a small margin of error. And I think the big kicker here is on the treble. This one is a little bit brighter and more airy sounding than some other gaming headsets in this price range, but not horrible. I think the most noticeable thing when I game, just to point this out, is right around 5,000 to 6,000 hertz. That is definitely a little bit of a sharper, snappy sounding treble. And usually if I can do custom EQ, my solution with this, if you're using Dolby Atmos or the dongle where you're limited to a 10-band EQ, is I just reduce 8 kilohertz by a few decibels, and that kind of tapers off some of that sharpness that you might get. Now, if you don't hear that sharpness and it doesn't sound overly bright and sparkly to you, then leave the 8,000 hertz where it is, because if you lower that whole band, it might make the headset sound a little bit less detailed and a little bit less clear. Now, I did measure the DAC in default signature mode just to see if this is doing any EQ, whether you customize the EQ or not. And as you can tell, it's basically the exact same frequency response. It's within the margin of error because anytime you put a headphone on your head and you shift it just a little bit, frequency response can change. So this is honestly an incredibly tight showing. It basically clones whether I'm on analog or the dongle. In case you care about other EQ presets, I did measure all of them. Bass boost is extremely boosted. Then we go into bass and treble, where you're going to see, because this is averaging it, you're going to see the same bass lift, but also a treble lift. And then if I go into the vocal preset, you're going to have a lift in the mid-range. And let's just get rid of a couple others here because it gets super busy. So you can see that with a better color, it's more mid-focus and you lose a lot of the sub bass and upper treble. I don't think the vocal preset is good for most things. I actually think the signature sound, aka the same as analog, is the way to go with this one. Of course, I did measure the Nova 1 and the HyperX Cloud X, and if you look at the frequency response, it would look like the Nova 1 has the most bass, and it's definitely amplitude-wise the highest. However, I think if you're chasing sub bass, the HyperX Cloud series still to me has some of the best delivery of the really deep bass. So if you're using this for a lot of movies, I would say HyperX has the lead, followed by SteelSeries, followed by Turtle Beach. Now, it kind of starts shifting very dramatically after that. You could see a huge cut in the mid bass on the HyperX. That's why it doesn't sound too muddy considering how strong it is. Whereas the Nova 1, that yellow line going all the way up into 300 to 400 hertz, it's thick enough where it just sounds just borderline a little bit muddy and a little bit thick. More to my against my preference than anything. And it doesn't help that a recess in the mid-range follows that thick sub bass. So the overall like 1000 to 3000 hertz, it's comparable to each other. I think the best balanced one is the Turtle Beach Atlas 200, which is the green line, just because it lifts up enough in the mid-range. You don't have this egregious dip here compared to the HyperX, but it also doesn't have as much of the treble at 8000 hertz as the HyperX or the SteelSeries does. I'm personally sensitive to 8000 hertz, So it's nice to me that I don't get that random stabbing sensation of treble when glass is breaking or there's metallic sounds in either your game or when you're listening to music. So if comfort is the star of the show with the Atlas 200, sound quality is the opening act. It's definitely a very close second to comfort on this, and partly just because there's no major fault I have with this headset. Again, on the budget $100 wired analog thing where you can't do custom EQ, Turtle Beach did a great job of giving you a traditionally fun sounding headset, you know, like the punchy bass and a little bit more top end to kind of make things sound energetic and sparkly and engaging, but it's not done so poorly that I can't just go listen to music later either. Tonality overall is quite good. I think I have a slight edge on the voicing of the HyperX as far as mid-range goes, but the issue I have with the HyperX is when you get to that 8,000 hertz peak, if you find the wrong song, something that has a strong 8K, it really exposes it quite quick, and the same thing happens with gaming. So overall, if I had to pick one of the three headsets I've been discussing here and I couldn't do any EQ, the Atlas 200 is the easiest pick. Very clean, very neutral, and that punchy bass helps. Now, I've been doing a lot of first-person shooter gaming. That's traditionally my primary genre, and racing, and thanks to the Helldivers introduction into the Xbox platform, we've been playing a little bit more of that lately as well. I'm also testing some computer hardware, so spoiler alert, I will be covering some hardware like graphics cards and full system builds. As a result of that, I've been purchasing more games to play and test on. So I've been kind of expanding my exposure to games, and it's helped me appreciate this type of sound profile more because I can go in and play Call of Duty and be super competitive. This felt very natural. I didn't feel like I was holding myself back from being competitive. And then when I jumped over to Helldivers 2, I was playing Doom. I got Cyberpunk on PC, and it's just been a fun balance of immersive sound and openness. I don't feel like this is a super deep pounding bass. This is more of a kind of a snappier, lighter mid-bass focus. But the difference that I notice with this guy is when it comes to like detail retrieval and overall technical performance, which you don't normally talk about much on a gaming headset because gaming headsets typically use pretty cheap drivers and they're not known for like clarity and low distortion. Turtle Beach has always had a slight edge in certain cases on the budget side, mainly with like the Stealth 600 and 700 series. They usually use really good drivers. It's the other things that people kind of weigh against for pros and cons for considering against other brands. When you're looking purely at an analog headset where the software, wireless features, built-in EQ, all of that stuff is not possible here, it really exposes two key things. That's comfort and sound quality. And thankfully, Turtle Beach did not skimp on driver performance when it comes to detail retrieval. Because of that, I feel like the Atlas 200 does a good job of kind of replicating what the game engine is trying to do. You know, if you're hearing little blades of grass crumple under your feet, you're hearing wind off in the distance, or you're listening to music and you want to hear the fingers slide on a guitar string, something like the Atlas 200 is going to do a better job at replicating that over the Nova 1 or even the HyperX. Partly with the HyperX because of how it's tuned, but overall, it's still a good headset. I just prefer the overall tuning of this more when you factor in overall detail retrieval, distortion handling, and generally the frequency response just being versatile. I find imaging performance to be good on this, so if you are playing purely competitive play, this type of sound profile being a little bit more neutral and open and having relatively good driver matching means it is pretty easy to pinpoint where various audio cues are coming from. This sound profile also works really well for spatial audio, so if you're concerned with multi-channel Atmos gaming, this is going to do a good job of kind of simulating various effects of objects throughout your listening space, if you will, better than some other headsets that might be either too dark or too bass heavy. Considering prices just keep going up with all consumer goods, I'm really happy to see such a compelling option in the $59 starting price point, and even for $69.99 to have this dongle for PC players, you can get a really good sounding headset that's also comfortable and made well in the budget category. So I'm pleased to see this kind of competing with some of the other juggernauts in this price range. And with that being said, I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already, because I'd love to see it in some future videos. I am covering stuff from Astro and HyperX if you've been paying attention to some other new releases. So yes, those videos are coming. With that being said, thanks again for watching. Stay safe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.